3 minutes ago, FBI agents walked into a live press conference and arrested a sitting sheriff in front of dozens of cameras, reporters, and his own deputies. Sheriff Marcus Webb of Monroe County, Georgia, was standing at a podium speaking to supporters, talking about his record, promising to continue serving his community, and then 6 FBI agents appeared at the back of the room, walked down the center aisle, and placed him under arrest for accepting $890,000 in bribes from a construction company in exchange for protection and favorable treatment. The entire thing was captured on video. The shock on his face, the gasps from the crowd, the moment he realized his career, his freedom, and his reputation were over. This is the story of how a decorated law enforcement officer with 24 years of service became one of the most corrupt officials in Georgia history, and how the FBI built a case so airtight that they arrested him in the most public way possible to send a message: nobody is above the law, not even a sheriff. November 3rd, 2024, 6:47 p.m. Monroe County High School Gymnasium. Sheriff Marcus Webb had called this press conference to announce his candidacy for re-election, his 4th term as sheriff. He was popular, respected, leading in the polls by 12 points. The gymnasium was packed, 200 supporters, local media, county officials, his wife and 2 teenage children sitting in the front row. Webb stepped up to the podium wearing his full sheriff's uniform, badge polished, American flag pin on his chest. He looked every bit the confident law enforcement leader he'd been for 12 years. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. "It means the world to me and my family to have your support. For 12 years, I've had the honor of serving as your sheriff. And if you'll have me, I'd like to serve 4 more." The crowd erupted in applause. Someone started chanting, "4 more years." Webb smiled. He launched into his stump speech, talking about crime rates that had dropped under his watch, community programs he'd implemented, the trust he'd built with the people of Monroe County. He talked about integrity, about accountability, about holding everyone to the same standard under the law. The irony would not be lost on anyone once they learned what was about to happen. Webb spoke for 18 minutes. He thanked his supporters, his family, his department. He promised to continue fighting for the community, to never let them down. "I believe in this county," he said. "I believe in every single one of you. And I promise, if you give me 4 more years, I will continue to serve with the same dedication, the same integrity, the same commitment to justice that I've always had." The crowd stood. Applause filled the gymnasium. Webb raised his hands in triumph, and then FBI Special Agent David Martinez stepped forward from the back of the room. Agent Martinez walked slowly down the center aisle, deliberately, his FBI credentials visible in his hand. 5 other agents followed behind him. The applause began to fade. People noticed, turned, whispered. Webb saw them approaching. For a moment, his smile froze. His mind raced. What is the FBI doing here? Is this about the campaign? Did my opponent call them? Is this some kind of political stunt? It took him a few more seconds to understand. Martinez reached the front of the stage, held up his credentials. "Sheriff Webb, I'm Special Agent David Martinez with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need you to come with us." The gymnasium went completely silent. Webb's face went pale. His hands, which had been raised in victory moments ago, slowly lowered. What is this about?" Martinez climbed the steps to the stage. He was professional, calm, but firm. "Sheriff Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for soliciting and accepting bribes, honest services fraud, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. A woman near the front started crying. Webb looked out at his supporters, at his family sitting in the front row. His wife had her hands over her mouth. His teenage daughter was crying. "There's been a mistake," Webb said, his voice shaking. "This is some kind of misunderstanding. Agent Martinez, I'm sure we can clear this up. We can discuss it at the field office. Please put your hands behind your back." "You're arresting me now, in front of everyone?" "Yes, sir." Webb looked around desperately, looking for help, for someone to intervene, but nobody moved. Everyone just stared in shock. Martinez pulled out handcuffs. "Is that really necessary?" Webb asked quietly. "Policy, sir." Webb's hands were trembling as Martinez cuffed them behind his back. The metal clicking sound echoed through the silent gymnasium. The sheriff of Monroe County, the man who had just promised integrity and justice, the man leading in the polls, was being arrested for corruption in front of 200 witnesses and multiple cameras. A second FBI agent stepped forward with a document. "We also have a warrant to search your residence and your office at the sheriff's department. Those searches are being executed simultaneously as we speak." Webb's legs almost gave out. Martinez steadied him. "I didn't do anything wrong," Webb said, but his voice had no conviction. He knew they had him. The FBI agents escorted Webb off the stage, down the center aisle, through the crowd of his stunned supporters. Nobody said anything. Nobody moved. They just watched as their sheriff was led away in handcuffs. Outside, a dozen federal vehicles were parked. The scene was secured. More agents, U.S. Marshals, county deputies who had been notified and told to stand by. Webb was placed in the back of an FBI vehicle. As they drove away, he could see the crowd spilling out of the gymnasium, reporters running to their news vans. The story was already breaking. By 7:30 p.m., it was the lead story on every local news station. By 8 p.m., it had gone statewide. By 9 p.m., national news outlets were covering it. Georgia sheriff arrested during campaign rally. FBI charges sheriff with $890,000 bribery scheme. Elected official arrested 2 days before re-election. The timing was devastating, not just for Webb personally, but for his campaign. Election day was in 48 hours. His name was still on the ballot, but he was sitting in a federal detention center charged with corruption. So how did Sheriff Marcus Webb go from respected law enforcement officer to federal defendant? The answer is simple: greed. Webb had been sheriff for 12 years, 3 terms, 3 elections, 3 landslide victories. He was popular, charismatic, the kind of sheriff who showed up at high school football games and county fairs, who knew people by name, who made everyone feel like he genuinely cared about their community. And maybe, at some point, he did. But somewhere along the way, Sheriff Marcus Webb made a decision that would destroy everything he'd built. He decided that his salary of $92,000 a year wasn't enough, that he deserved more, that the rules that applied to everyone else didn't apply to him. It started small. It always does. In March 2023, Webb was approached by Richard Donovan, the owner of Donovan Construction, one of the largest building companies in Monroe County. Donovan's company was working on a major commercial development, shopping centers, apartment complexes, millions of dollars in construction projects. But there was a problem. The county building inspectors kept finding violations, safety issues, code problems, things that would delay construction, cost money, and eat into Donovan's profit margins. Donovan needed someone who could make those problems go away, and he knew exactly who to call. The first meeting happened at a diner outside the county line, neutral territory. Webb and Donovan sat in a corner booth, away from windows, away from other customers. According to the FBI's investigation, which would later reconstruct this meeting through witness testimony and financial records, the conversation went something like this. Donovan explained his problem. The inspectors were being too thorough, too careful, following regulations too closely. It was holding up construction, costing him money. Webb listened. He was a problem solver. That's what sheriffs do. Donovan made his proposal. If Webb could ensure the inspections went smoothly, if he could make sure the sheriff's department didn't look too closely at certain construction sites, if he could apply pressure to county officials to speed up permits and approvals, Donovan would be very grateful. How grateful? $10,000 a month. Cash. No paper trail, no questions asked. Webb should have said no, should have stood up and walked out, should have reported the attempted bribery immediately. Instead, he asked when he'd get the first payment. The arrangement began in April 2023. Every month, like clockwork, Donovan would arrange for Webb to receive $10,000 in cash. Sometimes it was delivered by Donovan himself, sometimes by one of his employees, sometimes left in a gym bag in Webb's personal vehicle, sometimes handed over in a parking lot in a plain manila envelope. $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year, on top of his sheriff's salary, and all Webb had to do was look the other way. When building inspectors raised concerns about Donovan construction projects, Webb made sure those concerns didn't escalate. He'd call the county building department, have a friendly conversation, suggest they were being too strict, remind them that economic development was good for the county, that sometimes you had to work with businesses, not against them. When neighbors complained about construction noise or safety issues at Donovan's sites, Webb made sure those complaints were handled slowly, lost in paperwork, delayed until the construction was finished and the complainants gave up. When one particularly diligent building inspector refused to approve a project that had serious structural issues, Webb had him reassigned to a different area, out of Donovan's way. It was corruption at its most efficient, not dramatic, not flashy, just a systematic abuse of power in exchange for cash payments. For 16 months, it worked perfectly. Webb's bank accounts showed nothing unusual. He never deposited the cash. He used it for expenses that couldn't be easily traced, paying contractors in cash for home renovations, buying a boat from a private seller with cash, taking his family on vacations paid for in advance with cash. His official salary went into his bank account. The mortgage got paid. The car payments got made. Everything looked completely normal. And the cash? The cash funded a lifestyle upgrade that would have been impossible on a sheriff's salary alone. A new truck, a bass boat, a timeshare in Florida, private school tuition for his kids. Webb thought he was being careful, thought he had covered his tracks, thought nobody would ever find out he was wrong. In July 2024, a whistleblower contacted the FBI. It was an employee of Donovan Construction, a project manager who had been present for several of the cash handoffs, who had kept records, who had photographs, who had been troubled by what he was seeing and finally decided he couldn't stay silent anymore. The FBI takes public corruption seriously, especially when it involves elected law enforcement officials. They assigned the case to Special Agent David Martinez, a veteran investigator with 15 years of experience in white-collar crime and public corruption cases. Martinez assembled a team: financial analysts, surveillance specialists, forensic accountants. They began building a case against Sheriff Marcus Webb. The investigation started with the whistleblower